All right, it is the Shock Pod.
It's alive! Enter the Shock Pod at your own risk.
Presented by HorrorShock Media. This is a Horrorpunk and Shock rock podcast, hosted by Reverend Chad Wells.
Shock Pod is alive. This is the second episode of the HorrorShock Shock Pod podcast, all about the scene, horror punk, shock rock, anything related to the lifestyle, genre, etc. We are joined today with all HorrorShock artists. We have, I'm going to introduce everybody real quick here. We've got Mr. Jared Lord of Zipperguts fame. Jared, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
We've got Mr. GD Fangs of Hideous Monster. Say hello, sir.
How's it going? I'm here to rock.
And I've got my lovely co-worker in both our day job of tattoo artistry and in our night job of creepy crawling and rocking and rolling, my bassist daughter, PJ Wells. Say hello, PJ.
Hello, PJ.
So I just got done recording the first episode of Shock Pod. Had Dan Canzonieri on from Electric Frankenstein. Had Kyle 13, who used to be in the Jackalopes with me. He was in the Loveless. He was in the Big Bad, several other bands. And we had a guy, JG Shepard, who was like, he was a musician as well, but he was more of one of those horror punk super fans, which we have. And he was there for what we call the second wave of horror punk, which was Blitzkid, Calabrese, the Jackalopes, the birth of that, I guess, Michael Graves era, post Michael Graves era horror punk that kind of congealed and became a thing. And JG was the guy that was like super supportive at every show, made fan content about us all, did videos online where he talked about like the important records and all of that. So we had sort of band and fan perspectives in that one. In this one, it's all band perspectives. So we're not going to have fan specific questions, but this is a genre of music, if you can even call it that, or a lifestyle orientation in music that I think is related to fandom. Some people self-identify as nerds or geeks or whatever. Some of us identify as fiends and hounds and things like that. But however you shake it down, something crystallized the love for mixing horror and rock and roll in us. So I want to go around and have you guys each give a really quick blurb about like how it was that you discovered that you liked these two tastes together. That I call it the Reese's Cup moment, the peanut butter in the chocolate, or the chocolate in the peanut butter moment. For me, it was a lot of things, Kiss being a major one. Jared, Zipperguts, what was your, when did you realize horror and music went together and that you wanted to pursue that?
I think for me, the very first inkling of that would be a combination of discovering Alice Cooper and White Zombie's Astro Creep 2000. I think those two really kind of cemented to me that, you know, heavy music and horror are a glorious combination. And so, you know, throughout the years, I loved the Misfits and, all iterations of them even, you can say what you want about each one, but I love them all.
Sure.
And what came from that later on, you had, the Graves era stuff, you had Chud went off on his own, you had Blitzkid, Calabrese, you had those guys come in and they kind of rebreathed life into that whole situation. Jackalopes included. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out.
Oh, thank you. We're often forgotten.
You shouldn't be. That's the thing. But so that hit, and so like from the '90s to the early 2000s, that was the thing. And I was into it, but not to the degree that I am today. I was more into metal, and so death metal, another good example of combining horror themed stuff with some pretty awesome music. And
Absolutely.
So as everything congealed in my brain, I discovered that, this community, because that's what we really are. It's not so much a genre, but we're a community of like-minded horror buffs. This is like, for me, the best release and the best family that I could have.
100%. 100%. I agree. And for me, metal played a big part in my forays into horror. GD, I know you're going to say something similar. We're close in age. I can't
Yeah.
wait to hear what the crystallization moments for this path of evil were for you.
Well, as a kid growing up, I had an older sister that always took me to the what they used to call monster movies. Because I'm from back east. My family's all from back east. So when we came out here to Portland, as a little boy, they were like, you want to go see the monster movies? And it would always be like, Night of the Living Dead and, Dawn of the Dead and, Frankenstein, the Wolfman. Like on the weekends, they would have all these like Universal monster movies playing. And then as I got older, of course, like you said, Kiss like ruled the world, in the 70s,
Yep.
so I was really into Kiss, and they were kind of visually like, not really like scary, but they were kind of, Gene Simmons like a demon, a monster. And then, as I got older, I got into things like Motley Crue. And after that, more like punk bands like, the Misfits and bands like that. And the thing that really, I think, grabs like the two, like the horror and the music is just visually, it just looks really cool. It's very artistic looking, like the monsters are just so cool looking, and then you have all these different people in, drawing them in comic books and making artwork and posters. And I just think the two naturally go together, music and the horror, I don't think it gets any better than that. If you look at any album covers, like Iron Maiden, like you said, metal was an influence on me. I was really into Iron Maiden. I was a little into the glam stuff, but by the time I was like 19 or 20, then grunge came around, and I just always just kept going back to my old stuff and stuff like the Misfits, the Cro-Mags, hardcore stuff, a little bit of death metal, Marilyn Manson.
100%. Everything you're saying is so dead on point with my path too. It was everywhere. Now, and interestingly, PJ Wells here is our youngest member on the panel, coming in at 20 years old. But I always say, though she's young, she was born into this. She was at horror shows as an infant.
And
PJ, it's going to be interesting for me to talk to you, because I think for all of us guys, we all grew up in a household where mom and dad they weren't maybe into the things we were into.
Yeah.
Monster movies might have been at least just tolerated or a cute thing, but it wasn't like a fandom for our parents. Do you have a moment where you realize that horror and music go together, or is it just always there in your
For
memory?
me, it definitely has just always been there. Like, it's just like, of course, like, my first concert was Kiss, so I I kind of, the similar spooky types of things were kind of always around. I remember always listening to Rob Zombie and stuff in the car, and Marilyn Manson and all that kind of stuff. So it was definitely always a part of, just my world. I also remember, though, specifically, this is a funny one, watching Scooby-Doo and the Hex Girls. And I was like, I want to be a Hex Girl. I want to be like them. They're,
Oh man,
they're vampires.
I remember
and
that.
stuff.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I grew up on the old Scooby-Doo. I think the old Scooby-Doo cannot be beat, but
Well,
I know that
Absolutely.
about the Hex Girls. I think they even brought Kiss on Scooby-Doo too.
They did. That
Yes.
was a favorite movie in the household. That was important.
that was all of our interests coming together when the Scooby Kiss DVD dropped, or Blu-ray, or whatever the heck it was. That rule. Scooby-Doo was a big one for me. Like a lot of my stuff that I come to that are like horror punk, you can call them horror punk tropes or shock rock tropes, come from Scooby-Doo. They come from the Monkees. The Monkees would always end up in a castle, and there's a Frankenstein with like a Beatles haircut chasing them. Like you were saying, GD, about the monster movies, we had the late night in Dayton, we had Dr. Creep. There was the late night horror movies in the 70s and the early 80s. Friday and Saturday nights. And then even on Sunday afternoons, I remember all of the Universal Monsters stuff and all of that, Creature from the Black Lagoon and stuff playing during the day. So it was like always there. It was always related to music in some kind of way, because part of the thing that made you scared of whatever it was had to do with the music in the background. So even if it wasn't like a rock band or something, music and horror kind of, if you take the music off of a horror movie, it suddenly becomes like 50% less scary. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And then the visual element, like you said, high contrast stuff. You know, Kiss obviously is black and white and silver and red, which is also like the horror punk battle uh, look or whatever. But also Shout at the Devil. Like I, I base
Hmm.
so much on what is like aesthetically correct on Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil. Like
That's
that's
a killer album, man. That album, that album like ruled my life, when I was like 13 or 14. And I actually got to meet Nikki Sixx a couple times over the years. And I got to actually tell him like how much like that album like almost like raised me as a kid. It was just like it kind of taught me how to party. It taught me how to like go pick up chicks.
oh
It
yeah.
taught me how to be cool. It just that album like just really came at the right time at the right place.
It is absolutely a perfect record. Like if we were doing a podcast about perfect records, it would be one of my top 10 that I would pick. Like the vibes, listening to Danger, like that sounds like a wet LA city street. You know what I
It's a
mean?
cool
Like
song, yeah.
they so encompass the vibe of that time and the sort of seedy dark side, but it's also there's humor in all of it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like there's funny stuff going on. The liner notes are kind of funny, recorded on Quackers and Krell. You know what I mean? Like,
I look at those bands like like Motley Crue and Rat and those kind of guys. I always kind of labeled them personality bands because they're more of a vibe. I mean, they're good musicians to a degree, but I mean, they're more of like it's just the vibe. It's the whole overall thing. Is the look, it's the sound, it's that personality or that vibe that they bring, and it just seemed to really connect with a lot of people. And like I said, it just came right at the right time. I don't know if if that album was released today, would it have the same success or impact that it did, then? I don't think so. Just because times are
yeah.
different.
Yeah, that's a fun game to play, the history game of like if
Hmm.
this didn't happen or if it happened
Yeah,
now, like that's
right.
a you know and then there are things that like certain people can't understand, like that are relative to age things, maybe, I guess, because I was here before you were here and I remember what the world was like before uh the MTV or
Hmm.
before you got to see your rock. There were the rock bands we loved the most, oftentimes pre MTV. They were guys in jeans and like a denim vest or something, and like they were not, they were fat guys, they were bald guys, they were curly haired, they didn't all look alike. Gene Simmons talks about Wicked Lester being that, he realized when he looked around and saw there was nothing that united the band, he couldn't unite the fans. So he had to get a band together that all had a cohesive look. You know what I mean? So
And an identifiable look, yes.
yeah, for sure. And so I think they're an interesting thing. Now, Jared and Presley are going to have a different point of view than what the older fellas here have, but they still are also going to have slightly different points of view because of obvious reasons of age still and whatever. But like,
Hmm.
how much did the image? I know that the image draws you in. For instance, Wasp is one of my all-time favorite bands, and it had nothing to do with the actual quality of songwriting. I found it eventually that there was a high quality of songwriting.
Hmm.
It wasn't what the imagery was. You know what I mean? Like I was pulled in by sexuality and Satanism and scary, bloody stuff, but like the songs were kind of like positive, uplifting, often Beatles harmony laden, tracks. But like you get pulled in by the image. How important is it to deliver music? And how important is the um the stuff that's beyond the image. You know, I know PJ got into a lot of what we're into just by being around it, but also by the bands that she found on her own that were not related to my interests. So
Yeah.
My Chemical Romance,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Those bands, I think you probably were pulled in by the imagery and the image, and then
No, I wasn't
okay, so it was
actually.
the music
As a matter of
first.
fact.
Okay.
I actually, a lot of the time, I tend to like the sound of bands more and care about that more. So, like MCR, I heard them because they were like put over top of some other band's video, and I was like, I really like this song, and I listened to the song forever, and then I finally watched the music videos. So that was a little like out of the ordinary. But there are certain bands too that I'm like, I like their look. I don't like their music, and I can't call myself a fan if I don't like the music. Like I think Black Veil Brides looks awesome, but I do not like the way they sound at all. But they all look like
I agree
so
with you on
cool.
that. They do. They
Yeah.
look cool, but their sound, I don't know. It sounds really weak to me. I
Yeah,
don't.
it's too new and too clean. I feel it's
But I mean, obviously, people like them. I mean, it's not like they're bad. I mean, they're
Sure.
a good band, but
Absolutely.
that's just not my thing.
Agreed.
Exactly. I agree too.
So talking about a lot of the stuff we're talking about, a lot of the bands that we're all into, like definitely beyond the visual imagery, they deal with like topics that are maybe controversial or shocking to people, whatever. For me, I loved that I grew up in a small town that was very, very Christian, and we were constantly told this Led Zeppelin song has backmasking on it. You shouldn't listen to it. This Judas Priest album will make you kill yourself. You shouldn't listen to it. This King Diamond is a real dyed-in-the-wool Satanist. You shouldn't listen to him.
That was dangerous to listen to King Diamond.
Oh,
Merciful Fate. It was dangerous.
But that immediately made me run to the mall
Want it
and buy
more.
the album.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%. Like I wanted to be scared. I want like the first time I bought Merciful Fate's Don't Break the Oath was the first King Diamond oriented thing that I bought because of that cover, and it had been in this like Christian programming thing that came on a Sunday afternoon in my house, and it was like, if your kid has these records, they're going to hell. And they showed that record. I immediately ran and bought that record, and I listened to it, and it legitimately scared me. Now it's like quaint heavy metal for old men. Do you know what I mean? But like at the time, nothing else was that scary. Did you guys find stuff because your parents hated it, or was that a thought in your head at all? Were you just attracted to it? Was the rebellion a part of it?
For me, my parents never really paid attention to really what I was listening to. Like my dad just like didn't like, that I had all those crazy posters up on the wall of, like Wasp and the guy with the saw blade coming out of his crotch. And I mean, I had all that stuff. But they didn't really care really what I listened to. They never really paid attention. But I think, like you were saying, that imagery, and like you have to think of the age group. Like, what are kids influenced by now? Well, when I was growing up, when I was like 13, 14, 15, 16, the crazier looking the album cover and the crazier the music, the more you wanted it. Like kids now, there's so many different genres of music and so many sub-genres of music. It seems like, it's not as universal. So if you ask my son, he's 17, he grew up listening to what I listened to and the Misfits and Kiss, and he likes it. But, he also is influenced by like hip hop, which I personally don't like at all, so I think that there's a lot of influences out there for kids.
That's an interesting point too with the hip hop stuff. I think right now, like a lot of the weird mumble rap, trap rap, SoundCloud rap stuff is really kind of very similar to the dangerous underground punk stuff. Like a lot of these SoundCloud kids with their like tattoos carved into their face and they're openly doing meth and whatever their trip is. Like that's Gigi Allen, but it's just mumbling over a hip hop beat or whatever. Like, does the spirit? So there's a spirit that maybe animates what we do, and the Christian people would say that's the devil, and I say, okay, then I'm a friend of the devil. But if that's what's animating it, does it move around generationally to find the thing? And so where was it in the past and where is it in the future? Is in the past Eddie Cochran and Elvis? Is that now Ghostmane and tattoo face mumble rappers, or is it, has it gone somewhere else? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's probably a weird question.
No, no, it's spread like a virus. It's gone everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the viral idea. So speaking about like horror punk, I keep using the term to describe what we all are, and all of us are probably different levels of accepted within what you would
Mhm.
term that community, for different reasons. I know Zipperguts, you're a super fan. You're a lot like the guy I was talking about in the last episode, JG Shepherd. You support everybody so hard. You are there buying, sharing, liking, resharing everybody's stuff. Super fan. Create your own music, and you get different levels of support with that music because it's not Graves era Misfits specific. It's recorded in a way that's a little bit more lo-fi sometimes,
Mhm.
and a little bit more from the gut rather than from a place of like production or whatever. And then
Yep.
similarly, GD's band, Hideous Monster, is suffers from some of what I suffer from, which is being an older cat. And how do you trust a 50-year-old white guy? First of all, and then number two, does he have anything new to say? And then number three, it also doesn't sound like Graves era Misfits. It sounds like what we like. Um, we all suffer from different levels of that, like scene. Um, I don't know what it is. Like, are you're not always invited to sit at the cool kids table, kind of a
Mhm.
thing, which is what HorrorShock
Yep.
Records is partially about. When we set that up, it's really about finding bands that are just real ass bands and backing them, and not being about a specific sound. Although I think listening to the tracks for Shockwaves too, we're starting to have a specific sound to our label. But like, how much does that play into number one, how you guys think about your next song? Does it play in? Do you give a shit what anybody thinks about it? Number one. Number two, are you maybe moved to not identify as horror punk, to try to identify as something else, or to just not worry about identification? I kind of like to
I
hear
just,
what everybody.
I mean, like for Hideous Monster, I mean, I just call it like I call it horror rock. Sometimes I'll call it horror punk, which I mean we do have some punk songs, but I think we're more of a horror rock, 80s sounding kind of horror
Yeah.
rock with a little bit of 80s flair to it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what separates my band from some of the rest of the bands. But I mean, I think there's a lot of bands out there that do present things in just a little bit of different way, like I was saying before, but they all just kind of fit together somehow. It's like that's why, we just played, I don't know, less than a year ago, we played Wednesday 13. That was our crowd. People loved us. We fit in great with Wednesday 13. Is
Yeah.
Wednesday 13 horror punk? Well, probably not really horror punk. He's kind of a horror rock guy, a shock rock guy, I
There's a
guess. You can
lot of
call him.
glam metal and
A little bit of
shock rock.
glam metal,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I think it just kind of goes with like a lot of these bands have a different, all these different vibes and personalities, but somehow they all just kind of like go together in that horror punk horror genre of music. And that's
Mhm.
great. Like Jared, I know that you like a lot of our stuff, and I'm kind of guilty of not sharing and liking people's stuff. It's not that I don't want to, it's just I just don't really have a big habit of doing it. I probably should do it more.
Mhm.
But I do know that there's a lot of bands out there that are kind of clicky, and they
Oh
don't
yeah,
accept you into their
absolutely.
circle, and they're kind of snobby. I'm
Mhm.
not that guy. I accept everybody, and I treat everybody accordingly to how they treat me. So if you're good to me,
Mhm.
I'm always going to be good to you. I'm not going to be an asshole. I'm not going to like snub your band. And I've also had bands get upset with me and actually even argue with me at shows going, how come you're not out there supporting us up at the front stage? And it's like, hey man, I'm getting ready to play a show. I mean, when it comes down to it, everybody that has a band, you're going to be standing up for your band above everybody else. And if you say anything other than that, I think that you would be lying. So I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but I think it's important for people to share and support each other. But I also think it's important to not be snobby to other bands because you think that somehow these people think that they're better than you. Because like I said, I don't think I'm better than anybody. If you're in that horror rock genre and we all share the same likes and dreams and hopes and the same kind of monsters and imagery, I mean, we're all kind of family, really. And we shouldn't be like
absolutely
snobbing or snubbing anybody or snubbing any bands. I do see that happen a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Jared, what do you have to say about that?
Well, so like as far as horror punk goes, I definitely label myself into that, but more so thanks to Testy Malone and the Slice 'em Ups who coined the term torture rock. I got permission with them, so I've started using that as to kind of describe what I do, and I think it's more suited. And I also like the term slaughter punk. That kind of fits in there as well. And yeah, like I see a lot of like the brotherhood of the we are the horror punk scene types, and then there's the rest of us that are like, hey, we do this shit because it's fun, we love it, and we want to share the love to everybody else too. So it is what it is. I don't think you're gonna escape that in any music genre, like, but at the same time it can be disheartening because it's like, you see these groups that maybe you look up to a little bit, and then you get an interaction, you're like, huh, I guess you're kind of a dick after all.
I won't mention names, but I've played with some of my heroes that I really looked up to for like a long time and was pretty surprised at some of the way, some of these guys I looked up to really are in real life, and then if you're doing this long enough and you play enough shows, you realize that all these guys are kind of doing the same thing you are. A lot of these bands are do-it-yourself bands. They're trying to, reach as many people and be as successful as possible and sell as much merch as possible because, you don't have record companies, giving money to any of these bands, at that level. And so they're just trying to make a living and trying to make money. And some of these bands that you think are really, really successful really are not as successful as you think. And they're doing it because they love it. And you have to posture yourself in order to be relevant, so people will buy into you.
Yeah, absolutely. Something like Alice Cooper is a perfect example. Like Alice Cooper is totally now like a DIY family run business. Like that's, there's, he did go through the era of being on Warner Brothers and being funded and bankrolled and whatever. And then he went out of that, and rather than just retire to the golf course, he was like, okay, let's get the kids and the wife and everybody involved, and who's going to book this thing? Because I got tours to do. This is what I do. I think that, but he doesn't go out and, hey guys, look, I'm doing this by myself. No, that's behind the curtain stuff. That's you don't need to see what's behind the curtain all the time.
For me,
go ahead, Peach.
Okay. For me, that's one of my favorite kinds of things, like Alice Cooper and how he has his family involved and how involved Ozzy's family is and everything. Like, I really love that as, kid of a rock guy. I think it's really cool. And I think it's like neat to see that the behind the scenes for us, though it's probably a decent size smaller, obviously, is pretty similar to those bigger people, like it's still, I think that's cool.
We're doing the same thing just on a smaller level.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I mean, I actually have a tour bus, and I drive it. When we go on tour and everything, and like I take my son with me. He doesn't want to go in it, next time because he's kind of been there, done doing that for a long time. He's like, that's boring. To him. I'm like, why are you crazy? But to him it's boring. He'd rather hang out with his friends and do what he does. So, but it is cool when you can have family with you and bring your family with you. But again, we are kind of doing the same thing that those legends are doing, just on a smaller level.
Yeah. I mean, that's 100%. And I think the thing is the thing that I understand about what we do is that we have obviously a compulsion. Like if somebody has a compulsion toward, chewing their nails or painting seagulls or whatever weird thing it is, we have a compulsion to create this thing and to do this thing. And it just so happens that it scales up into you get a van or a tour bus and you go and do this thing other places, and there are definitely people who, well, Zipperguts, for instance, is not necessarily a live band. It's not a thing that is going on tour or anything like that, but you're still playing the same game as everybody else that's on any other independent label in every other way. You're self-funding and financing and carving out time for your recordings and getting them released and stuff. So it's interesting. We were talking a lot in the last podcast about, what I keep talking about this second wave of horror punk. That era was, I think the scene congealed and became a thing in a way that it never had before. The Misfits weren't part of a scene when they existed. They were part of the punk hardcore scene. They weren't part of a horror punk scene. They were the horror band in a greater scene, which is what like my bands were. We were dark bands in just a greater scene of people or whatever. But it became really specific and got codified and defined and everything in the early 2000s because of mp3.com and MySpace, both sort of happening in tandem with each other. Bands suddenly had essentially a free website where they could share their pictures, their music. mp3.com, you could send people through to listen to your music online for the first time ever. They could download that mp3, take it with them. They could order a CD from the company, mp3.com. So the Jackalopes and Blitzkid and all Cancer Slug and all of those bands are from that. We're all mp3.com bands. We're all MySpace bands. Some of the bands just broke up all the time and fell apart, and and some of the bands like Blitzkid stayed together and just kept going, and it's why they're now perceived as something much larger than that. But
we actually did a couple dates with Blitzkid about a year ago. We played Portland and Seattle with them, and then we played with Cancer Slug I think right after that, and then now we're playing with Cancer Slug in October too here in Portland.
Sweet.
So those are really, and the thing is, like Alex Story, we played with Doyle. I played with Doyle. I've known Jerry for like 25 years, Jerry only.
Yeah.
I went to I went to two of the Misfits reunion. He invited me to the one out in LA, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
But before Jerry did the reunion shows with Glenn Danzig, he was doing, he had his own version of the Misfits going on, which when I met him, he had Marky Ramone and Des Cadena, from Black Flag.
Yeah, I played with them back then.
And Jerry was singing all the vocals, and it was a big do-it-yourself thing. He has had a Winnebago. Those three, would travel together in the Winnebago, and they would just do the dates, and it wasn't a very big production. It was kind of like a do-it-yourself thing. Even like when we play with Cancer Slug. I mean, they're just traveling in a van. Oh
yeah, it's just the three of them carrying their own merch and gear 100%. There's no roadies, no anything. Right. We just played with them too. Same thing.
Right. Yeah. And it's just, like I said, it's a lot of people don't, like you said, don't see behind the curtain, like what really goes on. They think you're like living this crazy lavish lifestyle, on the road, partying backstage and all. But a lot of those guys, you're driving, they're their own drivers, they're worn out one day after the other. And
it's why bands on the road always end up writing country songs. Like we get out on the road and we're like long hauls and close calls, truck stop speed. Like that's the life. It's not the rock show the whole time. You're a fucking truck driver and a t-shirt salesman that gets to play. You're a
t-shirt salesman, yeah.
You get to play for a half hour and that's part of your payment because nobody's fucking paying you.
Yep. Right. Yeah.
Like how'd we do tonight? Oh well, after we paid the sound $1,000 and paid the venue 400 and paid the security 800, you guys owe us $750.
And
Oh,
that's the
cool.
other thing is you really got to hope that, that people do connect with you. And I mean, you have to write stuff, you have to have material that you like, for yourself to play, but you also have to, like for me, I write stuff that I keep in mind that, other people, I'm going to need other people to like this in order for it to like put me places I need to go. So, that's a real big thing too. I mean, you can't be delusional. You have to kind of write for your target audience, you
Mhm.
know.
There are
Um,
those weird
Yep.
things though. Like I'm always devil's advocate. I agree with you 100%. If you listen to my band, I am using classic tried and true songwriting methods that I learned from Elvis and the Monkees and the Beatles. Like that shit works. And that's why we do it. We just do it heavier and faster. But that same thing being said, I like Gigi Allen because it's so bad.
it's
I
so
like
raw, it's so
Yeah.
so absurd, it's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like Anal Cunt because it's
Yeah.
so terrifically, horrifically bad. There's some things I'll draw a line. You're not going to catch me listening to Screwdriver. Not going to do it.
Nope.
But you know what I mean? But there's stuff that's like that's horrible, and that's why I like that. And not to say that Zipperguts is horrible, but Zipperguts, you trade in horrific imagery. So in the vein of trying to make things that people are going to like, are you ever thinking about that? Or are you thinking about the fact that I want to make this worse in what it's about so that the people who like fucked up shit like this more? Like where are your thought processes when you're putting together, for instance, from your new album that I'm producing, by the way, the song
Oh
I
yeah.
Fuck Nuns? Like how does that
So there's
sell to a bigger crowd?
well, okay. So I'm actually going to go into a little bit of the story for that song. So those of us who like punk rock, we're familiar with the Clash, right?
Absolutely.
And so we're familiar with Death or Glory. And I found it so amazing that this whole, from that singular song, we got this whole like elaborate set of t-shirts that came into the punk scene that said, I fuck nuns, right? And here we are, what, 40 some years later, and nobody had written a song called I Fuck Nuns. And I'm like, well, we gotta fucking do something about this here. So I sat down with that intent, and and now a lot of the fans aren't going to know this until now, but I've rewritten that song. And so the version that is coming out is going to be the final version, and it's changed. Like, at first it was just like, haha, I'm edgy, I fuck nuns, right? And then it's like, well, how can we make that worse? So it's like, all right, how about they're dead?
How about they're dead? That's always a way to go.
Classic horror
No.
punk. Let's make them dead.
Yes. How can this be worse? Kill it. All right. And that's kind of a theme that I go with. And it's because when I write music, Zippergut specific at least, I focus on the fact that of all the cryptids and all the spirits, mankind is the worst out of all that shit. Like absolutely 100%. So I write from the viewpoint of people suck. And so
Yeah.
whether I'm writing about a shitty person or writing from the perspective of a shitty person, I want it to be something that's going to catch your ear and go, did he really just say that?
Absolutely. And I think you're winning. I think you're
I
winning
try.
that battle. And we at HorrorShock are happy to represent you in winning that battle.
But one of the other things, and sorry to cut you off, Chad.
No.
So I've got some newer stuff that I've been writing for Volume 2, even though Volume 1's not out yet. And I went and I did something that I don't normally do with Zipperguts, and I wrote something from like a personal perspective.
Yeah.
So like, typically Zippergut stuff is just like inspired by a movie or just inspired by a really fucked up idea. I wrote one that is, I mean, it's inspired by a fucked up idea, but it's also like a personification of intrusive thoughts.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's like kind of
personal
outside of
personal
the normal.
psychological horror. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the lyrically it's still gross, but like it's more than just being a gross song. There's a little bit of deeper meaning in there for once.
So that's a question, and I'm gonna give it to PJ because PJ hasn't been talking much. But then I want you guys both to answer it, and I think GD is gonna have a great answer for this too. As you progress as a musician, you start out with, I'm going to be this kind of musician. I'm going to start this kind of band. I get this idea of what it's about. And then maybe the first songs are great, but they're probably somewhat two-dimensional. They're a little flat. And then as you progress as a musician and you go more introspective with where these things are coming from, suddenly your audience grows. So as you focus inward, to your self and your actual thoughts on feelings and emotions, then you grow your audience, which seems counterintuitive. It seems like that first thing where you're selling to an audience, you go, we're going to write all songs about whatever, you know what I mean? Cocaine and boobs, and that's going to get our audience. And then you go like, I'm obviously an old hair metal guy because the song's about cocaine and boobs. And then you have a lot of cocaine and boobs, and the next album is On a Steel Horse I Ride kind of shit. You know what I mean? It's like, I miss her. I've been on the road. I won't forget you, baby. Every rose has its thorn, whatever. Those are the bigger songs. Those are embarrassing things to feel and share, but those are the bigger songs. So, PJ,
Yes.
coming from a background now musically, you were into everything from obviously behind you got Axl Rose, David Bowie, Yoko
Yeah.
Ono, the Small Faces, uh, not horror punk bands, but I do
No.
see a Sid Haig picture back there, so you still get cred.
Yeah, that's from when I met him when I was what, 3?
Baby, yeah.
Yeah.
For you, your big thing where your music crystallized was emo.
Yeah,
I
kind
call
of.
it that, and I know that's
Yeah.
a kind of thing, but
Yeah.
do you notice the bands that you liked more, that you connected with more, were sharing more of themselves and less of the trappings of their genre? This is kind of a tricky question because what I'm getting into is about us all being more fucking metal than Graves punk. But
So, oh man. Well, I don't know. I don't know really
like
because
MCR is more introspective than Fall Out
yeah.
Boy.
Well,
right?
yeah, I'm not, yeah, Fall Out Boy's not one that stuck around for that reason. I liked the tune of Fall Out Boy, but not so much the
And like early Panic at the
lyrical
Disco
content.
is more introspective than later Panic at the Disco.
Right. Well, yeah, 100%. That's because Ryan Ross is a lot cooler than Brendan Urie. But
I'm only saying these things so I look like I know what kids think.
I think MCR, I think they're really cool because their first album, it is in a lot of ways really introspective, whatever. But
And kind of a horror punk record, as a matter of fact.
that's what I was getting at. If
Okay,
you
go
would
ahead.
let me finish, good sir.
As you know, as a man, it's my job to interrupt you and make it look like it was my idea.
Of course, say the same thing I said a minute later, make it sound really
That's
good.
right.
But yeah, it's a horror punk record. Exactly. It's like there are emotional things and personal things, whatever. But I also really like there's multiple songs on that album I can't remember right now because my brain's spacing because I'm on camera. But
Vampires will never hurt you.
yes, exactly. They're written about or specific movies. I can't remember. I think Skylines and Turnstiles is written about horror movie, and like I love that. I love the Revenge album is like fully like that one. Less so. There's romance and stuff like that, but it's a whole like rock opera almost in a weird way. That there's a story. And Black Parade, it's a full rock opera. There's an emotional story going on. So I like there being some personal stuff, but then also some stuff that is like, this is a whole other universe that you can immerse yourself in.
Yeah, the escapism aspect.
Yeah, and I think that's cool because horrorpunk does that.
Yeah, well, so GD with Hideous Monster, what I hear in your guys' music is a lot of like where you know how to go, these are the tropes that exist in this rock and roll horror universe, but I'm going to use them to talk about something else. Like I think that you're writing like me, where you're talking about Frankenstein's monster or something, and it's you know what I mean?
Yeah, and our newer material now is slightly different. I think that you have the track October Morning that you're going to put on a compilation or something like that.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, yes. So early on, yeah, the band was writing songs about like Creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein, is alive now. I mean, all these, you know, references or like novelties about horror movies. But then, like, as the band progressed and got better and better songwriting, and you like already been there, done that. I think the songs get better when people start writing about things they can relate to, like emotion, feelings, mood, just things that are emotional or things that people can relate to. Just like you gave an example of like, a band like Poison, they're singing all about, big boobs and, or whatever, and party time to, sentimental stuff like Every Rose Has Its Thorn, so, I mean, they like progressed as a band, and like, I think the emotional stuff resonates with people a little bit better. So everything that we were writing before was all about the mood of Halloween. Now we're writing about things like death, pain, heartbreak, but still having a horror or scary or a supernatural theme around it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're picking the set and setting for your story and the universe for your story, and it's like this is your color palette. We're using
And
these
that's what
colors.
that's what makes this whole genre cool, because Jared said, he's writing songs about, I fuck nuns or whatever, see, so it's like very different from like writing about, Frankenstein coming to life or the creature from the Black Lagoon coming for you to, I fuck nuns. And it still fits in the horror rock or horror shock rock, genre.
It's a big umbrella. It's a big umbrella term.
The wide spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's so much stuff that like, and you can attest to this too, Jared, with the connections between like, there used to be so much distinction and line drawn between what was punk, what was metal, what was real, what was poser, all of this kind of stuff, and now those lines are just blurred completely.
Yeah.
Like and I know I've seen other labels talking about the disservice we're all doing to keep using terms like horror punk and things like that, which I think is bullshit. I think we should still use the terms we've got, but expand within that.
Absolutely.
But where does the line go? Like, because if I'm talking, and you're the guy I want to ask about this, because if I'm talking about horror music to somebody, they immediately think I'm going to talk about the Cramps, the Misfits, etc. Is Cannibal Corpse a horror band?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But they would get classified just as strictly death metal or old school death metal or whatever.
Just like
but those
Slayer.
songs are punk songs, essentially. You know what I mean? Those songs are absolutely horror punk songs, tuned down.
I had a conversation about that a few years ago with a friend of mine when I first started writing my own music. My initial goal was I wanted to take and do like a blending of horror punk and death metal. Like, because if you really, really, really think about it lyrically, they're the fucking same thing. It's just the delivery.
Yeah. Different guitars sometimes, different distortion pedals sometimes, different drum pedals, but essentially the same feeling.
Yeah, you can even take it like, so we've got the Lurking Corpses, right? They are right there. They are that line between the two, really. I mean, they're just as much death metal as they are horror punk.
100%. I think because they wear the masks and have the name that's so blatant, they get classified as pure horror punk, but they're absolutely blast beat death metal. Well, that's the other thing you use.
Yeah.
So for instance, like in horror punk, you weren't supposed to use double bass drums and things like that. You've got like double bass drums in your songs. You've got pointy guitars. What else can we do to expand this this scene? Like, what's the next phase? Where does it go? Do we care? Do we just keep
The
plugging along
thing,
and not worry about it? I'm asking these questions not because I really fully give a shit, because I just like music. Do you know what I mean? And I like
absolutely.
all of your guys' music, and that's all that I really care about. But it is that's what the internet wants to talk about, is the value of who's better, Graves or Danzig. Is White Zombie or Rob Zombie allowed to be discussed? Uh,
Right?
are we
Here,
embarrassed
yes.
of how famous and good looking his wife is, or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Not at
Mm.
all.
right? But so many people are. There are these weird things that you have to have the hair and the jacket and
Or no
the
hair.
right. But the thing is that we're supposed to be in a realm of creativity where none of that stuff, we're not supposed to want to wear a uniform. We're not supposed to want to look like everybody else. We're supposed to want to upset the apple cart sometimes. Like, why in the hell would we have a rule as arbitrary as no long guitar solos? Or I've seen people talk about they don't like Danzig because he plays with his shirt off. Like, you can't listen to the man because you can see his glistening chest. Like, that's a bizarre.
Well, a lot of the people that say that are, maybe people that, can't take their shirt off, and play, you know what I mean? And so I kind of get it, because it puts off a certain image, but I mean, you just can't please everybody. I mean, everyone's going to have a different opinion. I don't think that there's really any rules in any of this. I mean, I think we should all do what we do, and hopefully it connects with people. But I think also being consistent as a band is very important, because a lot of bands, they're here and then they're gone, and then they're doing another thing, and then there's another startup band, and that lasts for. So I think people seeing the band consistent with an identifiable look and a certain particular sound that kind of belongs to that band. Like if you put on an old Misfits album, like in 2 seconds, that's the Misfits. If you put on Michael Graves era, you're going to know that's the Michael Graves era. If you play Blitzkid, you know when it's Blitzkid.
Yeah.
And so that's what I always hope for, is like someone hears my guitar riffs and my songwriting and goes, "Oh, that's Hideous Monster." That's to me, that's success. And someone being able to identify and hear your music and hear your brand and go, I know that band. Yeah, that's cool.
It's important to have your own thing. I mean, everybody takes pieces from all kinds of places, like everybody has their different influences that make them them, but the way it comes out, that's original. I think that's cool. Some people just try to do exactly what other people are doing, and that's not cool. But I mean, it's cool for what it is, but yeah.
I mean, for
I've
me,
actually-
She's so nice. She says something's uncool, and she's like, "Well, it's cool for what it is." Like,
well,
just
for
say
me, like, I think being original is very important. I played in a Motley Crue tribute band for like 7 years. It's like one of the first tribute bands in Portland. And that was pretty successful. But at the end of the day, I'm playing somebody else's music, and I'm trying to copy some other guy. His way he's playing, and it's not very fulfilling. So I think if you're feeling good, about like what you're writing, what you're putting out there, I think other people are going to see that it's good, and that you believe in it, and hopefully they'll believe in you too.
absolutely.
I went through a little bit of a phase with some early Zipperguts. So I did the demo. Those first 4 songs, that was really what I was shooting for. I just didn't have the I guess skill set to pull off exactly what I wanted to do. But I tried. And then I did some later songs after following some advice that was probably well intentioned, but so I tried to make Zipperguts more accessible. So I got rid of the harsh vocals.
The clean vocal era, clean vocal Zipperguts.
And I can still listen to it, but it's like, oh God, what was I thinking? The songs themselves aren't bad. It's just it did not fit the aesthetic of what I wanted. And so, I thought about it, and then I went back, and so Sleigh Bells and Autoerotic Exsanguination were the 2 songs that were like me coming back to doing what I want to do, how I want to do it. And
I think that's a good point, though, is that you don't know, though, sometimes what you're supposed to be or
Mhm.
what you're supposed to be doing until you go and push the edges. Like, where is the edge? And
Yep.
and sometimes you find it and you go, okay, that was a silly choice, or that was maybe like a band like Kiss, The Elder. I think The Elder's an awesome album. Nobody else does. Kiss doesn't think it's an
I
awesome
like the
album.
Elder. I do like it. I
See,
mean, but
thank
you have,
you.
yeah, it's a good album.
I like it. But they decided, well, let's not do that again. Do you know what I mean? Like, our fandom doesn't want that from us. So I think you constantly have to check your edges and try things out. I think that your uh clean vocal era is far weirder musically sounding because it's a little scarier because it's like when you have rock voice, it's like I'm doing a rock thing. It fits with this rock thing. It can be about anything. But when you're doing like you were like a scary ass Mr. Rogers horror punk guy or something. Like, you have such a sweet voice that when you go non-harsh with it, it's like, oh fuck, that guy's creepy as shit. But I don't want to rock out to that. I don't want to put that in a playlist with all my favorite rock and roll. Whereas this other stuff that's the newer stuff, it goes right next to Motorhead and Midnight and
Mhm.
fast rock and roll stuff perfectly,
Oh yeah.
just seamlessly. So you find what's good, what's not. Maybe every other album or two, you creep people out with
Mhm.
a really sweet vocal line or something, but you find those edges. So we're getting close to an hour here, gang. First thing I want to do is make sure everybody's all promoted up. Okay. So, um, stuff that's coming up, stuff that's coming out. GD, we've got you guys on the Shockwaves 2 comp. Zipperguts also on the Shockwaves Volume 2 comp.
Very
Creepy
cool.
Crawlers, our band, also on the comp. This comp is going to be one for the record books. I think it's going to come out of left field and kick some people in some weird ways, and it's going to upset some people and make some other people happy. It's a very there's a lot of guitar solos in not a bad way, in a very good way. There's a lot of guitar solos, there's a lot of guitar, there's a lot of rock and roll and heavy metal influence. There's a lot of 1980s influence in there, and not a Misfits kind of a way, in a whole Satanic Panic. Spellgrinder is opening the comp with a track that, I mean, this thing sounds like it would have been on the soundtrack for like an Escape from LA knockoff movie. Like, it's these guys are so legit, like 80s hair metal, like 29 Palms desert lizard fucking weirdos. I love them.
Oh yeah.
They're like the new Cramps to me almost. There's a lot of good stuff on there.
There's
What's
Oregon.
next? What's that?
There's some Oregon on there.
There's some Oregon. There is some Oregon on your song. Yeah, I played the
Yeah.
organ. So what's next for Zipperguts? We've got Books of Blood Volume 1 coming out. When is that again?
Sometime in November. I don't know if we have a specific date yet, but November.
Yeah, I'm shooting to honestly have you done and ready to roll by Halloween, because we're
Oh,
rolling out a
perfect.
bunch of stuff at that time, but November is the promised date for the next Zipperguts, and there's going to be some music video stuff happening with that.
Mm.
Hideous Monster, what's next on our docket with you guys? What's up? What do you got coming up, show wise, release wise?
Yeah, so next month, I think it's September. I want to say I could have the date wrong. September 26th. We're playing with John 5 at the Bossa Nova Ballroom here in Portland, Oregon. And after that, October 8th at Dante's, we're playing with Cancer Slug. So those are the only two things on the books right now, because we are breaking in a new drummer. He's really good, and he still has to learn all the old material. So we're just going to kind of wait till we book it, wait to book any kind of touring or anything like that till he's really solid.
Well,
And then
those shows are enough to not need to tour for a month or two.
think
Those
about
are
it
pretty.
this way. This guy joins the band. His first show is with John 5. How cool is that?
Yeah,
How
that's
lucky
pretty
is
good.
he?
That's pretty great.
But yeah, and then we were in the studio, here at the beginning, or I can't remember what month we were in there, but we have like I think 6 tracks that we recorded. You have one of them. We're going to be releasing one at a time, or we're going to be doing artwork with each one, and then we're going to be probably putting everything on one album at some point for the artwork of it. And fortunately, our my artist that does our artwork for Hideous Monster is Johnny Bush, and he works for Wednesday 13 and Rob Zombie and everybody else. So he does really knock it out of the park stuff for us. So those albums are just so beautiful. I still love being able to open up an album and put it on a record player and play it.
Yes.
So that's what's coming up for us. Album, a few shows. We're going to be opening up for some heavy hitters, and then a tour to follow at some point.
I really love the move of doing sort of singles leading up to a collected thing. It's really the move right now. It's what so many people that are in non-adjacent genres to us. You see the hip hop scene and the pop scene and all of that. Like it's really singles.
It's more economical too for a band to do that way, because then you have material throughout the year to release to fans, so they're getting something new instead of just blasting it all out there. And people don't have a long attention span anymore. So if you put 10, 12 songs on an album and let them go all at once, you're going to lose being able to cruise through the whole year, like releasing a little bit and keeping everyone engaged with you.
Absolutely. And for us, for independent bands, we miss out on the fact that if you're following what a giant artist is doing, you're screwing up. That's like if you have a business where you make fishing bait in your house, like one at a time, and you're trying to follow what like the massive Chinese corporation that's doing billions of units is doing. The reason that you used to want to put out singles in a specific order and tier things in a certain way was the lead up to try to sell as many albums as you could on release day to get on the billboard, so that you get the free promotion, the free advertising, the hype and the buzz and all of that. We're not gonna, well, actually nowadays billboard's a lot easier to hit. I say within the next couple of years we're gonna have a HorrorShock record on billboard, because it ain't that hard anymore, and I think we're that good. So but like it used to be for reasons that had to do with radio. Radio needs 8 to 16 weeks for programming. They need to have a guy convinced that you're worth putting in the lineup next to Tom Petty and Led Zeppelin or whoever the hell is ruling the channels. It's for reasons that have nothing to do with any of us. We should be putting our shit out to the fans. Our songs are not the product. Our songs are the thing that is our heart that we're sharing with the people, that leads them to the product, which is the t-shirt or the CD at the end or the record or the whatever the fuck it is. So I think the idea that you guys, and Zipperguts does it too, do singles, put them out, put out videos if you can, do as much stuff like that as you can. And then when you put out the record, you're going to sell it for the rest of your life. It's not going to sell, like when a Pearl Jam record doesn't sell well, they never sell anymore, is what it's supposed to seem like to us. But the reality is that I still sell Jackalopes records, and that band is 20 years old. So we're going to sell these for the rest of our life. We've got plenty of time. The thing to do is to get great fucking product out and made that we're stoked on. But drip it, man. Drip it to the people, because if they don't see something from you every 2 weeks to once a month or something like that, they forget you exist.
Yeah,
And
they don't engage as much. Yeah, right.
Stay in their faces, because every new single you release, somebody, even if they only listen to it once, if you put out the whole damn album, they'll listen to one song on the album once, and they won't listen to the other 10 or 20 songs that are on the album. But if you put them out one at a time, they listen to it one. Everybody listens to it once. So now you just did more numbers per song for that release by doing it as singles. Like, it's just, people that are doing it any different are missing the whole boat on what's happening in the internets and stuff. So creepy crawlers stuff we got coming up. PJ Wells, you got to help me remember. We got one show. Right here. We got one show that we're doing before this even comes out. That is with Pretty with the Lights Out, who are on We Are Horror Records, which our band also used to be on that label. Great label from merry old England, doing very similar things to what we're doing in their own style. We have had our ups and downs and love affairs and hate affairs. We're currently on good terms with those guys, so I'll say their name. Dan Phillips, how are you, bud? I know you're watching. Love you. Pretty with the Lights Out, we're playing with Batthorn, who's also in HorrorShock with all of us. Batthorn is a fun pop punky relative horror band. We're also playing. Who else is playing that show? Damn it. Oh, House Ghost, a Dayton
House
band,
Ghost.
horror adjacent, poppy, proto, whatever kind of punk thing. Really, really good band on Rad Girlfriend Records. They're playing with the Linda Lindas, who are a huge young Riot Girl band that's out now. They're playing with them the night after they play with us, so that's a big show. It's already happened.
Linda
if you're
Lindas are
watching this.
currently also on tour with Green Day and Rancid, so like that's a whole other cool
Yeah.
connection. Like they're
Yeah,
cool
that's pretty
themselves.
big.
Also,
That's about just as big as you can get right now, especially with everybody
Yeah.
else in the world canceling their arena tours, and those guys are slaying it. And then we've got, what do we got? That's August, September. We've
let's
got
see. We
playing with
have the
Alice.
28th.
Yeah, we're playing with a band called Alice from Los Angeles. They're a big like goth industrial kind of band. The guys from, oh man, I'm gonna forget the name of the group. Jared, help me out. Who's the it's got nerve in the name. I just lost
Cranial
it.
Nerve.
Yes, Cranial Nerve. The fine folks from Cranial Nerve sent this band our way. We're also friends with that label and booking conglomeration. And we're playing with Alice, and there's a local alternative shop that's doing a fashion show called Clash at that show. Then we got in October, we've got 2 shows in October, right? One is with Pretty with the Lights Out. Pretty with the Lights Out and Pumpkin Guts in early October in Indianapolis. I don't remember the date. Later October, mid-October, we're with Batthorn again and a bunch of great area bands at the Halloween Freakout #9, which has a Mars Attacks theme this year. And then we have a great new song called Bring the Blood on Shockwaves Volume 2. It is our Bon Scott AC/DC era worshiping, rose tattoo worshiping, horror rock and roll freaking anthem. And I can't help it, but I do sometimes sound like Jack Black in that song. I tried not to. And then we've got a new album of material coming out soon after that I don't quite have a title for, but we have most of the songs done. And I think they're going to freak people out pretty epically. And I'm stoked on it. So the label has tons of stuff coming out. We got stuff from 84 Tapes coming out at Halloween time. We've got new stuff from Rise from Your Grave in the works. There's a whole Redux album of early stuff that they're re-recording. There's a whole album of brand new material being worked on by those guys. Another killer band that's starting to play live shows now, but their produced work is just immaculately phenomenal. Like they're taking like a Swedish speed metal meets Graves era punk thing and doing some wild stuff with it.
Meets Cthulhu.
Yeah, and just beautiful dudes. They're just like sweetheart guys, like no egos, just killer people. Yeah, man, I'm forgetting people on the label right now already. I'm talking to several other bands right now that want to do stuff with us. I really am looking forward to 2025 with all you guys and all the other bands, and a lot more episodes of the Shock Pod. So before we go, in the future, when we have a listening audience, which we don't yet because this is only the 2nd episode, when we have an audience, we're going to have audience rapid fire question round here where we're going to ask some fun questions to everyone. But since we don't have a studio audience yet, or a listening audience, whatever the hell studio audience, I'm obviously a Happy Days kid. Since we don't have that yet, I went to my good friend and helpful companion ChatGPT 4.0 to ask some really good rapid fire horror and shock rock related questions that the internet will be burning to know the answers to. And these are, I hit everybody in the last episode with these 2, and some of these are really good actually, and some of these are exactly what you would expect from AI, which is close but no cigar. Anyway, first question. I'm going to go around and I'll point it to each of you individually. First question, we're going to start with Jared. If you could resurrect one horror movie villain to join your band, who would it be?
Oh man, from Phantasm.
That was actually mentioned in the first episode. So
really?
Yeah, J.G. Shepherd mentioned him. So let's ask, what instrument would you have him play?
Bass.
Bass. I said he should play bass in the last episode. JG said he should play keys. I think JG's wrong because we're both in this episode together. GD, if you could replace or resurrect one horror movie villain to join your band, not replace anybody, but to join the band, who would it be?
Probably, it's kind of a weird one. It'd be the Dracula from Andy Warhol's Blood for Dracula. The Dracula that got killed at the end. He was this like a really, really cool Dracula.
What was his name? Klaus von Trier or something like that, right?
It was just the Andy Warhol's Dracula. They had Flesh for Frankenstein.
Yeah. No, I remember. I was trying to think of the guy's name. He was a German guy.
Udo Kier.
Udo. That's it.
Udo.
Yeah.
That's who we want to resurrect.
That's fantastic. PJ.
Okay, that's a hard question. I'm gonna go. It's not a movie; it's a TV show. But I'm gonna go with. Oh, hang on, I forgot his name now. Give me a minute.
Okay, well, I'll do mine. I can't remember what I can't remember what I even said in the last one. So we'll go again in the because I answered for the Jackals in the Creepy Crawlers to join our band, a horror movie villain. I would say, wow, that's a really hard one. I would want the fictional Charles Manson from the 1970s Helter Skelter TV movie to join.
Oh, that's
I remember that guy.
That's pretty good. All right. I changed my mind. I think I'm going basic, but we're going Frankenstein's monster so we can play Jackalope songs and he can sing them.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right, next question. If what oh shoot, I lost my questions. Okay. PJ, back to you again. What's your go-to song for getting pumped up before a show?
Okay, well, these days, actually, I've been listening to Main Muscle by Rambler a lot.
That is one of the greatest rock and roll songs of all time, and it's
amazing. It's got the vibe is like, it makes you want to dance, but it's also like rock and roll still. I also like listening to Motley Crue, of course. I think we listened to Motley Crue before Horror Hound quite a bit. Yeah.
GD. What's the song to get you pumped up?
I'm going to go with Motley Crue, Shout Out the Devil, or Blood Feast by Misfits.
Nice. Jared, what do you got?
I got two of them for you. I got Dead Baby Nursery by Brutaler. That'll
Thank you
pump
for
you
turning
up.
me on to those guys recently.
Oh, you're very welcome. And then the other one would be Death Comes Ripping.
Oh, nice one. That's a good one. Okay. Back to you, Jared. If you had to get a tattoo of one horror punk lyric, what would it be?
That's actually a really tough one because
this one slowed down the last episode too, actually.
yeah. Probably a line from Waist Deep in Blood. It might the line where it goes, "It may have been wrong, but it's how I survived."
That's pretty good. That's tattoo. As a tattoo artist, I concur. That's tattooable. GD, you have some killer ink. You've got to have an opinion on this. What lyric from a horror related song?
Lyric? Probably.
You can just name a song.
Have a lyric drawn or tattooed on me. Probably One Last Caress.
Oh, that's nice. That's a good one.
I was gonna say that.
Well, you can say that too. You can say that too.
I'll say that too.
All right. For me, I can't remember what the hell I said in the last one. What did I say? I can't remember what I said. I'm maybe a narcissist. I would get one of my own lyrics tattooed on me. I would get from
nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
From the Jackalope song, "The Night You Died." That was our biggest song. That one was on a comp with Wednesday 13.
It's one of my favorites.
I would get "Oh God, How We Cried the Night You Died."
That's a great.
All right. Last question. No, second to last question. What's your favorite horror themed food or drink? GD.
Horror themed food or drink?
Yeah, that's a weird one.
I guess I don't know, cotton or was it candy corn. Halloween candy
nice
corn.
one. Nice one. Jared.
Mine's so much not so. This is going to tie in because it goes to a Facebook post that I saw. But essentially, I love meatloaf. So there was a baby shaped meatloaf in a post one time, and I would totally eat that.
I'm fully in for a baby-shaped meatloaf anytime. I thought you were going to make a Rocky Horror reference with that one. But...
Me too. That's what I thought he was going to do.
PJ?
Count Chocula. I love
Count Chocula. Oh,
there
that's
you go.
fantastic.
That's perfect. That's a good one.
that's
Excellent
that's
answer.
actually really good. In the last episode, I answered this one already, and I couldn't think of anything. But when I eat chicken, I always think of Poltergeist. So I said fried chicken. But then the guys in the podcast were like, "Hey, Poultrygeist, the House of a Thousand Corpses, fried chicken is a horror food." So I'll go with fried chicken. Last question, finally, before we're out of here. What's one thing from the horror genre, be movies or music, that actually scares you? Jared.
Zelda from Pet Sematary, always and forever.
Nice. That one is pretty fucking creepy. GD.
Probably Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. PJ.
That was a pretty brutal movie, for the time.
Yeah.
Still holds up to today.
Fantastically. It's still being stolen from regularly.
Hereditary scared me pretty seriously. Hereditary was scary. A lot of bone bruising.
Yeah, a lot of buildup, a lot of creepy long buildup, and then they get you with something that make you feel bad. In Hereditary, I felt bad because I don't want to do any spoilers, but there's a terrible thing that happens. Has everybody seen Hereditary here?
I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's the scene that happens when the girl's got her head out the window.
Yes.
Up to that scene, I fucking hated that kid. That kid's acting drove me nuts. There's something about her face I didn't like.
I was just like
they psychologically made me hate this character so that when it died, oh, sorry, spoiler, don't listen to that part. When the fucking character died, I felt horrible guilt for like days. I was like, I wish this kid would die. And then the kid dies, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm so sorry.
Reverse of that, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when Wheelchair Boy dies, everybody's like, oh.
Yeah, right. Well, you guys were all awesome. I definitely want to do it again with all of you. We will have you all back when there are future things. I'm going to record these every couple weeks, do 2 at a time and then I'll release them every 2 weeks in a staggered schedule so that it's going to get to the point where later episodes are recorded far earlier than whatever. So if you guys have anything to promote or anything like that, let me know, and we'll try and set you up with a date that will make the episode fall near the thing you want to promote. That's way too much information for the listening audience. I should just tell you guys that off camera. Or send me stuff. I'm going to tack a news thing on here. So if we have stuff come up that's like, man, I got a show in 2 weeks, it's a really big deal, can you tack this flyer onto the end of an episode that's coming out at that time? I can totally do it. Like I can tack it on at the end a little. I'll record a piece later to tack on or whatever. So for our bands, this is your platform too. So send me your stuff. Make sure I stay updated with stuff that's even not related to my interaction with you in the label and whatnot. And we'll get you guys taken care of. So everybody out there in the world, go check out all of these bands. Everybody here, Hideous Monster, Zipperguts, the Creepy Crawlers, we've all got stuff in your box on Spotify, on YouTube, Apple Music, wherever you can get stuff, Bandcamp, whatever. We've got stuff in there. Even more than that, come and see us play shows, buy actual physical stuff from us, because that actually really supports us and helps pay for gas and stuff like that. And in the meantime, man, stay creepy and keep doing scary stuff.
And thank you for having us today, and thank you for promoting the bands, and thank you for having us in the HorrorShock family. I really do appreciate it.
Oh man,
yeah, me as well.
The pleasure is all mine, 100%. Thank you guys so much for being awesome and putting out great stuff that's worth putting this time into. I love doing this, but I can't do it for stuff that sucks. And you guys are definitely out there not sucking. So you're making it easy. So thanks. I'm going to stop the recording now. Everybody out there, Shock Pod, tell your friends.